Welcome to Bonnie Claire.
In this very location, echoes of mining, train wrecks, and gold fever still linger in the desert air. Today we're digging into the rich history of this mining camp and exploring its most iconic relic, the Bonnie Claire Mill, barely standing on its last legs.
Ripping out of the footings here.
Join us as we uncover the stories buried here and wander through a place that time has almost forgotten. Bonnie Claire is perched just outside Death Valley on the rim of a vast dry lake bed. The town's story began in the late 1860s when gold was discovered in the nearby Gold Mountain Range. By the 1880s, the north side of the range was buzzing with small mining camps, but the southern slopes, where Bonnie Claire would eventually rise, remained largely untouched. That would all change when a prospector named Guy Thorpe arrived in the late 1800s. When Thorpe began working his rattlesnake mine, there was no mill to process ore, so he was forced to haul it by donkey miles away to a primitive mill site. Tired of the trek and looking to ramp up production, Thorpe scouted out a water source nearby, aptly named Stinking Springs due to the high sulfur content. He then moved his steam arrastra operation from Old Camp to this very location, which would soon become known as Thorpe's Well. The mill he built here was a modest operation, with 5 stamps crushing ore from several nearby mines like the Rattlesnake. Though not much remains of Thorpe's Well today, the foundations here were the seed of what would eventually spring up Bonnie Claire across the valley, whose ruins are still out there, hidden in plain sight. When Thorpe passed away in 1893, his claims were passed on and continued to make a fortune. Eventually, the claims were sold to a couple of businessmen named Willis Emerson and Fred Fodenkamp. These two would form the Bonnie Claire Bullfrog Mining and Milling Company, naming it after Emerson's wife, Bonnie Claire. By 1906, the gold and silver booms in nearby Tonopah and Goldfield brought 2 railroads through Bonnie Claire, turning it into a key junction. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad and the Bullfrog Goldfield Railroad now passed right through Bonnie Claire, and a station was soon built. The stop was dubbed Montana Station, possibly in a nod to its out-of-state investors. Unfortunately, nothing remains of the station today, but when the railroads arrived in Bonnie Claire, it allowed production to ramp up quickly. A new, larger 10-stamp mill was hauled in on the rails and built closer to the mines, and a town sprang up right around it. This is the Bonnie Claire Mill, or at least what's left of it. The current structure, built in 1939, replaced the earlier 10-stamp mill and later expanded it to 20 stamps. It's a haunting relic abandoned out here, creaking in the wind, with beams that look like they could collapse at any moment. Let's go take a closer look. The mill functioned like many in the West, strategically perched on a sloping hillside and letting gravity do most of the work. Ore was hauled to the top, originally by mules and later by trucks. Then it was crushed and processed as it moved down each of the levels.
And this thing really is on its last leg. Ripping out of the footings here. This mill doesn't have long, it looks like. Wow, this place is massive though. Multiple levels. From what I can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You can still see all the chutes and hoppers in place, some of which still contain ore waiting to be processed.
Yeah, so it looks like from the rollers there was probably a conveyor here, a belt carrying the ore, and it goes right up into a chute here. And this is barely standing also. But check this out. So yep, and they had a door here. I'm guessing they had some way to crank this so they can open up the door and then let the ore slide out down onto the chute when they need more to process. And down it goes, down 3 more levels into the mill. Pretty cool.
Large pieces of infrastructure and some machinery remains, though it's barely holding together.
What a view onto that dry lake bed though, huh?
The stone buildings on the mill site here date back to the original construction, and they were reused by every operation since. As a testament to their sturdy construction, they still cling to life to this very day. Like many frontier gold rush towns, Bonnie Claire was a rough place to survive at times also. In 1910, a drunken fight between a railroad worker and his foreman ended in a fatal shootout. And in 1911, scarlet fever claimed the life of 5-year-old Dorothy Patnow, whose grave still lies in the town's small cemetery, alongside Doris C. Black, a teenager who died in 1916 after a mysterious illness. Add to this the remote inhospitable location, summer heat, and relentless desert winds, and you've got a place where only those with true grit endured. By the 1910s, Bonnie Claire's fortunes were fading. The mines weren't producing enough to justify the big mill, and the population dwindled from 250 down to just about 100. The two railroads, once the town's lifeline, merged in 1914 as service declined. One last breath of life came around 1925, when workers building the nearby Scotty's castle used it as a base camp and supply depot. Many workers lived in temporary travel trailers that were hauled into the site. By 1928, the railroad halted all service, and in 1931, Bonnie Claire's post office officially closed, with only 2 residents remaining. One of the old travel trailers was eventually repurposed as an addition onto the cabin here. It's pretty cool. It looks like they made it into a kitchen. A man named Victor Huson and his wife Melly had lived here, and he was responsible for the small operation on the dry lake. Huson would mine this claim on the flat until his death in 1961. It is said that Melly promptly left the claim and went back to Las Vegas. Since then, Bonnie Claire, Thorpe's Well, and the Sarcobatus Flat have sat silent, other than the occasional flyby. Bonnie Claire's history is still a bit jumbled because it never quite knew what it was: a mill, a railroad junction, or a mining town. The mining fever isn't over just yet either, as new lithium projects have recently begun on the Sarcobatus Flat and nearby in the old Bullfrog District. Some of the original gold mines that we previously explored in that area are now under claim again and set to produce even more gold from modern extraction techniques. It seems the lonely heart of the desert out here never really dies. It just sits silent, waiting for someone new to discover it. Thanks for joining us on this adventure, and special recognition to our Adventure Club members Dawn R. and Sammy Head. We appreciate your support. If you enjoy our videos, consider giving us a like and hit that subscribe button for more. Until next time, stay hydrated, stay happy, and we'll see you down that dusty trail.